Hi, shalom friends. There's a lot about storytelling. Sometimes storytelling is just simply entertainment. Occasionally the story is inspiring. Sometimes it's humorous. And very often it's thought-provoking. The stories of the great Hasidic leader, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, have elements of all of them. And let me share with you one of his very brief stories, which I believe has a key to much of life, but he doesn't give the lesson, so he trusts each and everyone hearing the story to interpret it in his own way, and I will offer one of the many interpretations. The story that he tells is that many years ago there lived a king who was not only very dedicated to his subjects, but he was very, very wise, and he was able to read the stars. And he had a prime minister that he consulted with, and one day he calls for the prime minister, and very agitatedly he says, something terrible is going to happen. I saw in the stars that this year's crop of wheat is tainted, and whoever eats from this wheat actually becomes a bit crazy. And I don't know what to do. I mean, I can't forbid it. People will starve. That means all of the bread and all of the oatmeal and so on, whoever eats it will be a touch crazy. What should we do? So the prime minister said, well, perhaps if we don't have enough for the country, we should set aside some of the old crop for at least me and you. So the people will be crazy, but at least the two leaders will be normal. To which the king said, that won't work. If everyone is crazy, and me and you are the only two people that are sane, then we will be seen as the crazy ones. And the people will say we're being led by a crazy king. So we also have to eat from it, not to lose our connection with the people. So the prime minister said to His Majesty, what do you suggest? He said, I suggest that we make a mark on our forehead. So we'll eat, and we'll be as crazy as everyone else. But at least when I look at you, and you look at me, we will both know that each other is crazy. And that's how he ends the story. I believe one interpretation would be, there's a type of a craziness which, when it becomes widespread, ceases to be crazy. And we could all turn to social mores, which allows for activities of today, which perhaps 20 years ago and certainly 50 years ago would have been considered not only outlandish, but literally crazy. So if I told you, for example, that according to the latest statistics, and this is from Time magazine, August, I think it was 15th, 2017, it's been estimated based on pharmaceutical data and medical data that 13% of all American adults have or will take a antidepressant type of a drug. Okay? And without taking a strong opinion whether it's good or bad, that's a lot of people. The trend seems to be growing. So I have a question for you, a very simple question. If you were to give today a person a breakfast and say, please don't forget to take a vitamin pill, would you consider that outlandish? Or would you consider that good hygiene, good medical practice? Well, hundreds of millions of people take vitamins daily, a supplement, and it's considered part of the diet. Now, what happens if this percentage of antidepressants people taking grow to, let's say, 25% of the population, which is very, very conceivable? Will it then become part of breakfast? So here's a smoothie, and here's a muffin, and don't forget to take your vitamin and the antidepressant. Well, everyone's doing it, everyone's taking it. Does that make it normal? Is that healthy? Is that to be considered ordinary? So there are times when just simply looking at population will not help you. Another example, and again, without taking a strong stand, because I know it's a very personal subject to many people, until 1968, until 1968, American psychiatry considered homosexuality as a form of mental illness. And then in the mid-1970s, they decided to ask the psychiatrists. And one of the greatest objections to this whole thing was not every psychiatrist was asked. It was those that came to essentially the Great Convention. And it was something like 5,500 psychiatrists decided that it's not a mental illness. 3,500 wanted to keep it as a mental illness, and they simply went with the majority. But even then, it was considered something not healthy, not ordinary or normal. And of course, in the late 1980s, that stopped completely. So now it's not only an alternative lifestyle, it's a way of living. Some people live this way, some people live that way. So tell me, my friends, when everyone acts crazy, does that make it normal? That's where the story comes into play. You know something? Even if we're all crazy, there's value in knowing that we're crazy. So when people ask, why talk about biblical values if no one in their circle is following it? They, at the very, very least, at the minimum, it's a reminder to people that there is a correct way of living, a godly way of living, a wholesome way of living, and then there's the opposite of that. And the fact that so many people are unhappy, or so many people are unfulfilled, certainly doesn't make it normal. All of us would like to be happy and fulfilled. Well, certainly if we're reminded of the biblical values, starting from respect your father and mother, continuing with the laws of interpersonal relationships, of being nice and decent and kind and generous and overlooking faults, continuing through the interpersonal relationships between man and woman with modesty and with sanctity and with respect and with bashfulness. This could remind us of not only we're crazy, but it could also bring us back, or at the very least, incline us towards a more clean way of living. And that is why, my friends, if reading the popular media is just going to be looking at another person who's eaten from this tainted wheat. But if you come to a class or you're online and you study and surf something of Torah value, Torah teaches, you might say to yourself, but I'm not following this. But at least you know that there is a way and there is a path. So shalom, friends. Good luck in trying to become more sane. Shalom.